And a good day to you, Explore Nation. John Lynskey, your ambassador for alumni affairs, here with season 7, lucky number 7, episode 3, and episode 115 in total. Nice number there. Of Looking Back with Lynskey, proudly sponsored by Albert Barthélemy and his family. Thank you, Albert. Our guest today, 2 decades as an explorer educator now, a graduate of Our Lady of Lourdes Academy. Great English teacher. She taught honors. She taught the not yet smart, creative writing, journalism, quill and scroll, part of CTech, ran SAC for about 5 years, was a cornerstone of CCNN for 15 years. And now her current role is Dean of Faculty, which is quite a job. So it is my pleasure to welcome Miss Christina Insua to the show. Christy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So 2 decades, does it seem that long?
It does and it doesn't. So I feel like it does because as long as I can remember, this has been my second home. Wake up in the morning, come to Columbus, and I'm home, right? But at the same time, it doesn't feel as long because every day is different. Every day is fun. In this role and all my previous roles, I've really enjoyed my time here, and I hope it continues for a very long time. So
yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
You went to Lourdes, and we have a number of women who went to Lourdes. What was your impression of Columbus guys when you were a Lourdes girl?
It's interesting. When I was a Lourdes girl, I feel like my impression of Columbus guys was always really positive. I had a boyfriend who went to Columbus at the time in high school. Great friends of mine came to Columbus. So I always had a really positive impression of the guys here. I feel like that impression has grown and changed over time. But as a high school student, I really, I hung out. I was a Columbus girl, let's say. Like at the time, I feel like things have changed now. Now everybody kind of gets along and it's together and it's all good. But back in the day, it was you were a Columbus girl or you were a Belen girl. You could not be both. And I was definitely a Columbus girl.
Well, you clearly made the right choice. That very easy. Is it true, and you've seen it both ways now, that Columbus guys have more fun at school than Lourdes girls have fun at school?
I have to say that is true. I've seen it from several perspectives, right? So, as a student, obviously a long time ago, I used to hear my friends like talk about all the crazy stuff that would go on here. And obviously over at Lourdes, it was way more structured, fun in its own way, but way more structured. And then as a teacher and as a SAC moderator for a time, we got to interact a lot. And I definitely saw the differences yet again, more of the same, like different generation, but more of the same. And now my daughter's a sophomore at Lourdes and I see it with her. She's very academically focused and driven and has a million extracurricular activities, which she loves and everything. And she loves her school. They have a ton of fun, but it's different than our fun. It's way more contained. It's way more girly, if you will. Like they dress up and they do fun things that our guys here just don't do. But our guys definitely know how to have fun.
That's a tradition. Yes. So a standard question for everybody. You went to FIU for college. Everybody's different. When did you know you wanted to be a teacher? Was it something early? Did you fall into it? Was it a little bit of both? What's your story on becoming a teacher?
I think I always knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I fell into it a little bit by mistake. So, for example, when I was in high school, all my hours, that's my phone. All my hours were really concentrated in teaching CCD. So I would go on Saturday mornings at my parish, which was St. Peter and Paul, where I went to elementary and middle school, and I would teach CCD every single weekend. That's how I got my hours for 4 years throughout high school. And I loved it. I loved teaching the little kids. And, I don't know, it was always like a part of me. But then I also wanted to go into journalism. And that's what I studied. My degree is in journalism and mass communications. And I started off working for several different companies. But when I ended up coming to work here, I was working for Hispanic Magazine, which was a division of Telemundo at the time. And I just, I don't know, I kind of like fell into teaching because I was looking for something that kind of would help me pay my bills steadily on a Monday through Friday, because a lot of the work that I was doing was kind of freelance and, you know, just wasn't steady.
Where did your love of English come from? Have you always been a reader? I mean, did you have that one teacher that inspired you to because I'm a frustrated English teacher. So where did the love of books come from?
Yeah, I mean, I love to read. That is my favorite pastime to this day, my favorite hobby. I want to say, I don't know, I would have to check my Goodreads to tell you, but I think I've read like 35 plus books this year.
Okay.
So, you know, this is really what I love to do. But I think, like, as far as a teacher, interestingly enough, my teacher who most impacted me, well, I have two. One of them, her name is Edith Diaz, and she's actually my daughter's current English teacher at Lourdes.
That's awesome.
So I went to parent night last week, and I said, first of all, I said, what are you doing? Because you look amazing. You know, like she looks the same as when she was my teacher. And she made a great impact on me, taught me how to love the classics, introduced me. I mean, they still do Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier as a summer reading, introduced me to Jane Eyre and some of the classic novels that I still love, Pride and Prejudice. And then as I got a little older and got into more electives and really focused a lot on journalism in high school, it was Miss Munares, who's now retired, but I still keep in touch with on Facebook and stuff. And funny enough, she is our coworker, David Ulloa's aunt. So, you know, it's all in the family, so to speak.
No, Miami is a small town disguised as a big city. It's 1 degree of separation, particularly with Columbus and Lourdes for that matter. So how did the interview at Columbus come about? How did this happy accident occur?
That is a very good story. So my brother was a sophomore here at the time in Mr. Morrissey's class, Cody Morrissey's class. And Cody was talking about how there was a teacher in the English department who had, you know, left in like late October, early November, and that they were in a difficult situation looking for an English teacher, and everybody, you know, was just kind of talking about it or whatever. And my brother came home and he was like, hey, you know, I heard they're looking for an English teacher at Columbus. And we had already, you know, spoken, you know, he and I about like, you know, I really need to look for something more steady. I need to find, you know, kind of like a firm footing, and then I can do my writing and all that stuff later on at night or whatever. Yeah. But I need something, you know, steady for the daytime. And he's like, why don't you apply? And I was like, I don't know, man. Like I had literally like just graduated college. I want to say I graduated in May. Well, technically, I guess I graduated in July because I did a semester of study abroad through FIU. And then when I came back, I was working and this job popped up in November. I want to say I'm a summer baby. So I graduated high school early. I was 21 years old when I was hired here.
Whoa. Yeah. I remember, I thought you were 12. You know, that's rough. And then I found out you were Joey's sister, you know, so, you know, your brother was obviously a great student, Silver Knight winner. We did not have many of those back in the day before Sylvie took over. So, because I went through this, what was it like having your brother in school when you were teaching?
It was, I think, harder for him than for me. You know, it was fine for me. I guess I was a little bit oblivious at the time to maybe some of the background noise. I was so focused in what I was doing and becoming good at it and just kind of learning because, like I said, I didn't really study education. And having him around was awesome because he kind of gave me the ins and outs of this place that I really wasn't as familiar with. I do remember, and again, you know, everyone's like one big happy family at this point. Like Anthony Lopez, who works in our IT department, good friends with Joey, and he and all their friends used to have breakfast in my classroom every day. They used to come back for lunch. I was like, I can never be alone here. You know what's going on. I have no time. And he and his friends were always around. So they really definitely made me feel welcome. So I was really happy he was here.
That's very cool. So let's go back 20 years. You're 21 years old, mid-year hire, never taught. I mean, that really is worst case scenario, sink or swim. Were you overwhelmed at first? I mean, how did you handle it? Day by day, hour by hour? minute by minute? What was your approach?
All of the above. I
Yeah.
think I'm a pretty strong-willed person, and when I put my mind to something, like I'm gonna do it. It's gonna be okay. So I think, it was very interesting. It was very different than the hiring approach that we have now. So it was kind of like, here's your book. Good luck. You report to that classroom over there, and you'll be moving throughout the day because you don't have a classroom. So
Yeah.
figure it out. And so I did. But yeah, it was definitely a day-by-day kind of thing. It was I got a lot of help, right? I had Charlotte Brumfield, who was the most wonderful lady in the English department. Like, I could not have made it without her. I'm aging myself as I say this, but she would give me her overhead projector slides, and we would like work together and stuff. And without her, I couldn't have done it. And then, of course, some of the guys here who, became like my friends and big brothers, so to speak, Rick Pellegrin, Omar Delgado, they had my back from day one, and definitely helped me get accustomed to everything here as far as the boys were concerned.
St. Charlotte, she was the best, no question. So you got hired by Brother Pat.
I did.
Was there really an interview, or was it more of a conversation?
No, I promise there was an interview. So my first interview was actually, I had like three. My first interview was with Keith Crossman,
Okay.
who was the department leader of English at the time, and that
Yeah.
went great. And then my next interview was with Brother Patrick, Pat Call. I think Chris McKeon was there. And I don't remember if anyone else was there. And that was, I guess my second interview. And then I came back one day to kind of shadow, and that was it. I was in.
You're in.
I was in.
And here you are. How long did it take for you to say you had your feet on the ground and you were comfortable and you were good with what you were doing? How many years?
I think it shifted. With English, I was very comfortable with the material and, what I was doing and teaching in general after the first year, I would say. But then after that, different things kind of got thrown in. Okay, here, teach creative writing. Okay, wait, change levels. Let's go to honors instead of college prep or phase 2 or, phase 3. And then, so all those monkey wrenches each took their own additional period of time, I think, to adjust. But overall, I don't know. I just feel like this is where I was supposed to be. And everything just kind of fell into place.
That's awesome. Okay, so you taught honors and you taught the not yet smart and everything in between. So here you go. What was good and bad about teaching honors, and what was good and bad about teaching the not yet smart?
So the not yet smart were really fun. I had a lot of fun with those kids. They would come up with the most random things and, just try to throw me off my game. And it was honestly a lot of fun. Yeah. So that was my favorite part about them. The hardest part was getting them to incorporate like a little bit of learning with that fun. That was always challenging. And it was like a day-to-day exercise. It was like, sometimes I remember I would close my door. You always have that one class that just, man, if you could get through this class, you can do anything. And I would close my door and I would say, okay, I'm going into the belly of the beast. If I can get past this, I can get through my day, and I still remember, like, I literally remember one kid's name from that class that I'll never forget. And that was hard. Then when you talk about honors, I think it's kind of like the flip, right? So the good part is those kids are dying to learn. They're all hyper focused. Right. Teaching in that sense is the easy part, because you're teaching to kids who want to learn, who want to get every tidbit of information that you can give them. The hard part there, I always felt, was like the begging for points. That always kind of like bothered me. Like, I'm 0.275 away. Can you just give me the A?
But miss.
But miss, can you just round up? And that was tough. The kind of incessant parent emails are tough with honors.
Yeah, they're high maintenance. They are very high maintenance.
They are.
Where the not yet smart, you just got to kind of point them in a direction. But I will say this: the not yet smart have the highest self-esteem of anyone in the school.
Oh yeah. They're
convinced they're going to rule the world, which is awesome.
And also, like, a lot of the time true.
It is true. Being a reader and a writer, I know you kind of fell into it. What did you enjoy about creative writing, and how would you teach creative writing today versus back in the day?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
loved class. I really loved the opportunity to take like lesser known authors and expose the kids to them and show them like these really cool stories that they're not getting in the classics in the English class, and just
Yeah.
kind of exposing them to, you know, different things that they hadn't maybe seen before. There's a story called The Wife Story by Ursula Le Guin that it's kind of like a reverse werewolf story. And I would always do it around Halloween, one of my favorites. And the
That's
kids were like,
awesome.
what's happening? And then at the end, like they would fight and guess like who was right. And you know, it was just one of those like really teachable moments that I loved. I really enjoyed. I think now if I were teaching that class now, I'd love to incorporate some of the novels that I've read on my own, like outside of here. And you know, that's kind of tough because when you're teaching an elective class, you don't want to give them something too heavy, because I don't know, you have to recognize that a lot of those kids have very demanding full schedules. So I would
Exactly.
to mostly like short stories and poems and stuff like that that were more manageable for them, just more realistic.
And there's the whole AI factor now that we didn't have to deal with back in the day, and it's here to stay. And so, everybody's just got to adjust. But I miss the days where you could just tell the kids to get out a notebook and pick up their pen and write something, on their own
Yeah.
using this, but it's the world we live in. So we'll get into more of that later in your other role. Okay, let's talk about someone who's become very significant in your life, and I'm really sorry about this, but Omar Delgado.
Yeah.
How did he con you into becoming co-SAC moderator with him? How did that go down?
So one day, I want to say it was in Mr. Larkin's room at the time, bottom of the C building. This is where they would hold detention.
Yeah.
Remember that? And
Yeah.
I was in Mr. Larkin's room for like one of my class periods because I was a traveling teacher, and I had to go in there after school to grab something. Omar was there. I don't know why. I don't remember if he was running detention. I don't think so. And he was like, hey, I'm involved with SAC. He was already kind of shadowing Mr. Crossman and Mr. Yu at the time. And he was like, why don't you do this with me? And I was like, why me? He's like, no, because we're friends and we get along. And then you're a girl and I'm a guy, and we're going to have girls at parties and we're going to have guys at parties. And this just makes sense. And I was like, okay. And, he's like, I'm good at parties, and you're really organized and you're really smart. So like, I feel like this could work. And I was
Notice that 2/3 of the responsibility was yours. He's
correct.
just good at parties. He's,
Yes.
yeah.
And,
Okay.
right. And if you talk to him about it, I'm sure that he will agree with you on that,
Oh, of course he will. Yeah, because everybody knows it to be true. So
correct.
were you involved with student activities at Lourdes, or was this all new to you?
No, it was actually all new to me. I had never done student activities at Lourdes.
Damn.
Okay. But remember, back when we did student activities, it was just parties. It was just having fun. It was just activities. At Lourdes, it was like, and it's student council. I mean, they take minutes of meetings. They do like contests. They do all kinds of stuff. It's government over there. It's over here it wasn't all that.
No, that's awesome, because things happened. Things happened. I mean, it's subject to debate and review, but Omar claims he did found Beach Bash. There's various stories about that, of course, as you know.
Yes.
We're going to do a podcast on that, actually. But I mean, what's it like being in charge of that circus? I mean, it's a circus at best.
It is. It's a lot of responsibility. I always, my hat's off to the ladies who run SAC now, and anyone in between, right? And even before us. But when we ran SAC, it was, 3,000 plus people at Beach Bash. And then, why not? Let's throw another party in the second half of the year. Let's call it the white party, because P. Diddy was doing something like that. That's what he was called at the time. He was doing something like that. So we're like, okay, let's do it. And then, let's have the school get a bunch of phone calls on how we're promoting Santeria because everyone's dressing in white. A lot of things happened.
So as you're diving into that, then Mr. Delgado pulls you in and changed the next 15 years of your life or so with CCNN. How did that deal go down?
Yeah, that was more my fault. That was more my fault because the Moss brothers had just, started the Moss building, and the new studio was going to go up. And, they basically spoke to Omar because Omar at the time had a video production company. He would shoot weddings and pieces and stuff like that. He didn't know anything about journalism or anything like that. And they said, look, we're coming to you because we know that you know video. We could either make a little room with a camera in it or whatever, or we can make you a really nice studio. But if we invest in this really nice studio, we need you to do something with it. And he was kind of like, well, I don't really know how, but of course he knew me and this is what I studied. So he's like, what if we, took this studio and made something of this show? Of course, I think a lot of people don't realize that before CCNN was the monster that it is now, it was in existence under Sal Canella. Yeah. So Sal
ran where the nurse's office is now. That was CCNN. It was a closet.
Fun fact, Dr. Vila was an anchor. So, we can go back to that footage one day, but
I hope so.
I know, right? So, Sal had a small operation with CCNN, morning announcements, all of that. And then we just said, okay, well, we can do our own morning announcements. We don't need Channel 1 at the time was being shown after, and we just said, okay, well, let's kind of see what we can do. And slowly but surely, we started learning how to operate all the machines. When I studied journalism, I really focused on print. So I didn't have a lot of background in broadcast. We kind of like did a lot of trainings and learned as we went, kind of like the fake it till you make it kind of philosophy.
Yeah, most of us have made careers out of that. Yes. So that, I mean, when you look, you can do this all over campus, all over Columbus. From then to now, you must be astonished at what you guys did in that 15-year more or less period. I mean, and I think CCNN to me is much like coaching, particularly in you're teaching kids to do something they really don't know how to do, and the time, just the sheer man hours that people don't really understand. What was the most gratifying thing to you during your tenure at CCNN? I mean, there's so many things to pick from, I'm sure.
There are so many things. Of course, we won. I have, 5 championship rings. Amazing. It's really great. But I think for me, I've never been one to like really put a lot of stock into awards. It's just not my thing. Like what I really loved was seeing the kids change and blossom in something that maybe they never thought that they could. There was one student in particular who was very shy. He became a leader in his own right. He was a kid who freshman year could not even sit in a pep rally because he would have panic attacks because it was too full of people and there was too much going on. And, he couldn't ride in a bus to go to a competition. He had to ride in the car because the bus, he had a lot of, social anxiety issues. And through CCNN and his slow exposure and everything, he was eventually able to anchor in front of a camera. He eventually became the president of CCNN, got a scholarship, went away to college, something that, his parents thought he would never do, and those are like the small wins that I think to me are huge. Seeing some of
those small wins are the biggest.
Yeah. Seeing some of our kids, like we have a student who like combined his love for coding and journalism and is now on the website under Politico in DC. Just seeing these like success stories that I look back on and I'm like, wow, like I helped with that.
Yeah, that's a wonderful feeling. And you can't put a dollar amount on that.
Yeah.
That's the thing. What were probably, and again, there's probably a lot of these, just the challenges of CCNN.
I think the time constraints were super demanding. They are still. That was difficult. I think there were moments where the kids, like, it always happens every year. In like the middle of the year, they get tired. They're not focused. You have to push and push and
Yeah.
push and push. And then sometimes when you push, you get parent pushback. And it's finding that delicate balance that to me was the hardest thing a lot of the times, and just figuring out, okay, how do we combine what we need them to do with what they want to do and make it fun at the same time so that it's something that we get a positive product out of.
How much were you able to incorporate your journalism background and your work with kids writing, stories, briefs, the news? How did you combine the two, production and journalism? Was that
That
challenging?
that wasn't extremely challenging because Omar kind of took over the production and I took over the writing.
Okay.
And I mean, for me, the writing was much more natural than the production, still is to this day. Obviously, he learned about writing through all these years of exposure to me and my lessons and listening. And, the school, we were super fortunate because the school allowed us to kind of like co-teach a lot of the classes. So when I had a
Yeah.
journalism class, Omar was off that period. And then he would come and sit in and we would be able to work on both together, the writing and the production. So even though each of us kind of like separated and took our areas and ran with them, we learned a lot from each other and the kids learned from both of us in that process. So I think that, it was really the best case scenario. And a lot of people would ask us, like other teachers, other schools, what's the secret sauce? What is it that you guys are doing that, sets you apart from everybody else? And I think it's really part of it was that each of us had our specialty. And, I never got in his way. He never got in mine. He never questioned, like, why are we writing this like this? Nope. If she says you're writing it like this is how we're writing it. If he says this is the way you're going to shoot it, this is the way we're going to shoot it. And between closed doors, he and I would go at it 100%, and he'll tell you that, but we never let the kids see that.
That's exactly a coaching staff, a good coaching staff. You might not agree that today is Tuesday privately, but out in public, you put a united front. Administrations work the same way, obviously. So let's segue into administration. Dean of faculty, you've had an interesting trajectory. Was that something you really wanted? How did that all go down? Because everybody in the administration has a different journey to where they got. What's yours?
Yeah, I never wanted to be an administrator. I never thought that I would be out of the classroom. It was not something that I wanted necessarily. It just kind of like, I felt like everything kind of fell into place at the right time. So, after 15 years in CCNN, I had already told Omar that I was already considering backing off a little bit. Although my kids are older, now I find that sometimes their demands have changed and I need to be around more for that. And I just was looking at, different ways that I could revise my schedule on that front. And then I had recently enrolled I guess I finished it 2 years ago. So the year before that, I had enrolled in a master's program. I had worked on that. I had finished that. So that put me kind of like on the right track. And then all of a sudden, I hear that Terry's retiring. So Terry Chomad obviously had the position before me. And I was like, man, like how interesting that like all this is falling into place. All of a sudden, people start asking me, if you're going to apply for this job, do you think you should apply for this job? You should apply for this job. And, anyone who's close to me will tell you I'm a thinker. I overthink and overanalyze everything. I don't jump into things. It's one of my biggest faults, honestly. So I'll tell you that like everything that I do comes with serious consideration. So I was like, no, I can't do this. No, I can't do this. And, I don't know. Everyone around me kind of like said, yes, you can. And I kind of said, well, I thought about it. And I decided to take that plunge. So once she announced that she was retiring, I reached out to Mr. Pugh and I said, look, I think I'm interested in applying for this job. And he said, oh, I think that's great. And of course, because I overthink everything, I set up a meeting with Terry before and I said, tell me, what do I need to know about this role? Because I feel like until you're in a role, you don't really even know what the role is all about, you know? So even before I applied, I sat with her for, an hour or two and kind of had her more or less explain to me what the job responsibilities were so that I could understand if it was something that I wanted to fulfill. Because the last thing I wanted to do was apply for something that then later wasn't going to be a right fit for me.
We have a Lavala program to help new teachers. There is no program, there is no handbook for administrators. It's welcome to the job and figure it out. And that for me was actually very rewarding to not know what's going to happen on a given day at a given minute. There's no schedule, there's no nothing. You know, that's the discipline office. Academic office, there's some of that, but I was thinking about this in your current position and Terry's before you. You're dealing with a lot of people, okay? And your situation is you've got people that have been there 40 years. You've got people that have been there 4 minutes, and then you've got everything in between. And on top of it, since, for example, when you started, even, you might have a 40-year teacher that knows everything about how to run a classroom blindfolded, but struggles with technology. Then you got the 24-year-old that's a techno geek, but has absolutely no communication skills with voice. And then you've got everything in between, and you've got to herd those cats. What is your approach? Because, that's what I just said is exactly what you're dealing with. The teacher that doesn't want to hear about all these meetings, and the young person that needs it, and the old person that can't turn on a computer, and the young kid that, doesn't know what a book is, but boy, oh boy, he can do that whole techno, what have you stuff.
Yeah.
How do you sort that out?
Yeah, very carefully. Very carefully and very slowly. I feel like, it's a really individualized approach. You're absolutely right. We have everything here. When you have 115 or so teachers, everyone has a different responsibility, a different level of understanding on different things, different needs. Honestly, like, it's like you say, you never know what your day is going to be like, because somebody has some problem every single day. Somebody has an issue every single day. And I'm not saying problem in a negative light. Like, it's just like,
they got a situation.
They have a situation on a given day, and it's normal. So, God knows I try to make my schedule, and every day, kind of blows up in my face a little bit. I try, but it doesn't really work. And then we got to figure it out, so I do have some tough conversations with people. I do kind of sit and try to say, what can we do to kind of meet halfway? What can we do to work out a situation? We have like different people now, thank God, who specialize in different things. So that teacher that you're talking about who struggles in technology, if I can't help, I refer them to a member of CTech. The teacher who is just starting and needs a little bit more guidance. Of course, we have the Lavala program, and I oversee that too. And working with Andy Chacon has been wonderful, and he's been a really nice guiding light for those people who have just started. And then some of the people who've been here for a long time, I mean, I feel like some of these people, myself included, are kind of like, well, we've always done it this way, And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, yeah, we've always done it this way, but maybe it's because this new way didn't exist yet. Maybe it's because we just discovered this new way and it's better, So I think that, people do come on board here. It takes some people a little longer than others, but most everyone comes on board, and it's really like a good place to be, because even if we argue, at the end of the day, we all have each other's best intentions at heart.
Change is scary to a lot of people, particularly at Columbus, because change does come slowly. It'll happen, but it's slow. And particularly with older teachers, I get it. I was such an idiot when smart boards came out. I said, I don't need smart board. Well, I was a moron, because it made teaching a million times more efficient and effective and interesting and fun, and for me as well, not just the kids, for me. So I hear what you're saying. Talk about the importance of two things you just mentioned in passing: CTEC, which you were a member of, and the Lavala program, which, you know, did not exist obviously a long time ago. Talk about the importance and the benefits of those two aspects.
Yeah, CTEC has been huge. So CTEC was founded by Omar and a couple of us other teachers, and we kind of like came together. We said, okay, we're pretty good with technology. Paul Coomer was one of the founding members with myself and Omar. And we kind of said, okay, how can we help people? This was when iPads were first introduced at Columbus and in the classroom.
Yeah.
And this was like an uproar. Like, why do I want an iPad? I don't want to teach with an iPad. Forget it.
Yeah.
We had already given them the smart boards that you mentioned. So now an iPad, another thing. And it was a moment. It was definitely a moment. So it took a lot of us to kind of like ease people into that transition. And I feel like we're still going through it. New things are popping up all the time. So new transitions are happening all the time. And if you think back, like, before iPads, okay, you had a smart board. Before that, you had, just a chalkboard or a whiteboard and, your overhead projector. Change takes time. And people, I remember when we first started with the iPads, the math department was like, absolutely not. And now you go into a math classroom and all of those teachers are using Smart Notebook, are using their iPads, are walking around and writing on the iPad to project on the board, things that we thought they were never going to do. And maybe they just needed a little bit more time to adjust to how they could use it for their classrooms. So I think patience and support are equally as important for people when it comes to technology. And then for Lavala, when I started here, Lavala did exist, but it was very different. It was more about the foundation of the Marist brothers. And even still, I feel like in 2004, when I started here, we didn't know as much about St. Martin and Champagne and everything, or we just didn't stress it as much in school as we do now, right? So now in the Lavala program, the first year, there are 18 meetings in which these people learn about the Marist Foundation, St. Martin and Champagne, and just our basic, like, everyday school stuff, right? Back then, it was, I don't even know how often we met, but I know it wasn't 18 times. And we got some guidance and, you kind of naturally found someone to mentor you the way that I found Charlotte. But it wasn't really assigned. It wasn't anything that you were kind of like starting with a purpose with Lavala or starting with a purpose with a mentor. So now I feel like we're a little bit more intentional with those things with Lavala. And I think it's helped greatly with our teacher retention, with the comfort level that people feel when they come here. I had several teachers and counselors this year kind of say, wow, I've never felt so welcome starting at another place of work. And I think that's a beautiful thing to say. Lesson plans, we can figure it out. Technology, we can figure it out. Everything else we can figure out. We need these people to feel welcome, like they belong, like they're part of our family, and then we can do anything.
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely it. The administration has gotten bigger, no question. Talk about Dave Pugh for a moment. I think this is year 11 for Dave, if I'm not mistaken. That's a long time to be principal, and his grind, his work ethic is insane. But one of the things I admire most about him is his leadership style, in that he is not a micromanager. It's your job, do it. And he's open to ideas. So how long did it take you to get used to the way that Dave does things?
No time at all, really. I started with Brother Pat. Brother Michael was principal for a while, for several years, and then Dave Pugh became principal. As a teacher and as a moderator of a big activity like CCNN, he was amazing to work under because talk about a straight answer. Like, that's what I need. Give me a straight answer. What do you want me to do here? Or tell me no, tell me yes, whatever, but give me a straight answer. And that's something that I'll tell you he always did. So, his leadership style, he leads with kindness. I think that as a principal, working now hand in hand with him in the administration obviously is different. but he leads with such kindness. He's open to ideas. He, basically checks in with everyone before making a big decision, which sometimes I look and I'm like, does he really have to do that? He doesn't have to. He's the principal of this school. He might have to check in with the president, but he doesn't have to check in with the rest of us. And he does, because he appreciates his team. And that to me is like the greatest part of his leadership style. He leads with kindness. I don't think I've met anyone who is more Marist than that guy, more hardworking than that guy. He practically, the sun rises and falls here at Columbus with Dave Pugh. He's always here. He's in everything. And I think he tries his best. And I think people see it, that he gives equal importance to everyone and everything around here. What other school do you know where kids can go into their principal's office without an appointment, without prior notice, and say, hey, Mr. Pugh, I want to start a club. And him say, okay, what is this club about? Fill it out. Do you have a moderator? Cool. You don't have a moderator? I'm going to help you find one. And he will go out of his way to help teachers and students alike, figure out what it is that they want to do. So, I'm really grateful for having worked under him as a teacher, and now, kind of side by side as an administrator. He couldn't be a better leader.
Great summation. You just mentioned something, being Marist. Talk about Marist of Champagne. I mean, Pugh and I did that along with some of the other guys this past year. You did it a few years ago. Just explain to people what Marist of Champagne is and why you decided to do it and what it means to you.
So I was part of the second cohort of Marist of Champagne. So I did it a few years ago, like you said. It is a formation program for lay people who are associated with the Marist schools or the Marist brothers in some way or another. I think when it first started, it was more like Marist educators, and now it's kind of spread to all different people who are part of the Marist community in one way or another. And it's a series where you learn a little bit more of the background of the Marist Brothers of St. Marcelin, of the foundation of what we consider our Marist pillars, et cetera, et cetera. And to me, why did I join? Because, like I said, this place has been my home for so long. And I think that this place wouldn't even exist without the Marist Brothers, obviously. So I kind of thought to myself, part of what they explained was as the brothers get older, they want to make sure that they have representation, that the Marist philosophy has representation among the lay people in society who are connected to the Marist brothers. And I, said, naturally, of course, I want to do this. So I joined the second cohort, went through the whole program. I had a great companion in Brother Peter. He was awesome.
There you go.
Yeah, and we met frequently and discussed, not only what was going on in the webinars, but also like what was going on in my life at the time. And I just really felt that connection to the Marist community. So at the end of that year, I confirmed in the ceremony that they have around June that I, in fact, wanted to be a Marist of Champagne. And then I've continued that trajectory. I believe I've been the companion of 3 other people after I finished the program myself.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that myself. So here's a question for you. Your daughter is a sophomore at Lourdes, correct?
Yes.
What are you going to do when she comes home and says, hey, Mom, some Columbus guy asked me out on a date? There you go. Now, there's a situation.
I think it depends on which Columbus guy, I think I'll be really happy, honestly. I remember, and it's funny because again, like I said, this place is all in the family for me. Yeah. For those people who might not know, Deacon Dr. Dugard is my sister-in-law's dad. And I'll never forget what he kind of told me when my brother and his daughter, Katie, started dating. And he was like, look, honestly, she's going to pick one of these guys to date. So I might as well help her find the best one out of the bunch and just help her make it work. And I was like, that's a good philosophy.
And it did work. It did work. Yeah.
They've been married for many years. They have 2 beautiful daughters, and there are many great guys here who I would love my daughter to date. I was a Columbus girl. I want her to be a Columbus girl too. She has been since, before birth pretty much. So she has to be. And then, I know that you're not asking me this, and maybe you will, and I'm cutting you off, but I have to mention my son because he, is a Columbus boy since, like, again, before birth. He can't wait to get here. He's got 2 more years, but all he does is say, Mom, only this many more months to go to Columbus.
Clock is ticking on that one. This has been a lot of fun. It really has. And you and the rest of the female faculty bring a different element to Columbus that clearly didn't exist when I was in school. And it has evolved over the years as Columbus has evolved over the years. And, I didn't know who Marshall and Champagne was when I was in school. It was taught by example. And now it is the foundation of our school. So if I was to ask you, Christy, what does being Marist mean to you? What would you say?
I think being Marist to me means loving what you do. I've always kind of struck, or that pillar has always struck a chord with me. Love of work, right? I don't feel like I, come to work here every day. Yes, I have my responsibilities. I have the things that I have to do, but I can truly say that I love my job. I love the people here. Being Marist to me means living in community, means having a support system, means, living in the way of Mary. I think that's what the female faculty, what you just said, brings to Columbus. Finding a way to support each other, to be there for each other, and to build that Marist community, be it through being a Marist educator, being a Marist of Champagne, or simply being a role model for one of the students here.
And you certainly are a role model for the kids and for the faculty. And I've enjoyed this very much. You're getting your job down now, just like you did as a teacher with SAC, with CCNN. You figure it out. And, thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
All right, Explore Nation. I hope you've enjoyed this one. I certainly did. So until next time, boys, buenos tiempos and adelante. Thanks, Christy.
Bye.